I have spent a lot of time in the last 3 years blaming myself for not fighting the system harder in order to find out what was wrong with me. Without a doubt, one thing Cycle for Lyme has helped me come to terms with is the fact that it simply has not been my fault. Christie Heffer is an inspiration. I first met and interviewed her on May 28, 2011. Not only has Christine had to deal with the blatant incompetence of medical misdiagnosis, but she and her family have paid a huge price.
In this, I believe the spring of actually 2006, but I didn't know that I had, well, I didn't know for 4 years, but my main first symptom that showed up would have been in August of 2006. But looking back now, I had the flu in the spring, and I had a few little symptoms that I kind of wrote off. Like my eye kept twitching, and I was having some pain in my stomach. And then when we were camping, sorry, when we were camping, my knee blew up like the size of a balloon, and I knew something was wrong. I didn't know it was Lyme disease. I didn't know what Lyme disease was. I don't know where I was bit, because where we live in Corunna, we have ticks everywhere. So the ticks are, you're pulling ticks off yourself constantly in Corunna. Especially my house, because I back onto a field, but they're throughout the whole town. Like, everybody says how bad the ticks are, and so I'm thinking I actually think that I was probably bit either in my bed from one of my dogs having the tick on them, or from being in my backyard. Well, for the first year, but since I didn't know about Lyme disease, they didn't know what was wrong. At one point they thought I had MS, and then the symptoms seemed to disappear. I started having the odd thing here and there, but it wasn't debilitating, so I didn't really think about it. And then about 1.5 years ago, I started having a lot of female problems, and went down that route looking for the cause of it. And after I'd had an exploratory surgery for that, and then I had a surgery for thinking I had kidney, or not surgery, but a procedure for thinking I had kidney stones. And then I ended up having a hysterectomy, and after the hysterectomy, about 3 days after the hysterectomy, all hell broke loose, and I started having severe neurological symptoms, and losing my sight, and just enough that I knew that something else was wrong. And then through going through the internet, I was able to pinpoint Lyme disease, because I had at that point probably about 65%, 75% of the symptoms, and nothing else seemed to fit. And I knew I had previous tick bites, so it kind of went hand in hand, but I didn't realize that it was such a controversial issue, and then it became a nightmare to try and get help. I started treatment last September, and he treated me until March of this year. He stopped because the College of Physicians started an investigation, because a neurologist had made a complaint against him for using long-term antibiotics on one of her patients, and he didn't want to lose his license, rightfully so, because Lyme is such a hot topic. And he basically let all his patients that have Lyme disease go, and his whole office, every time he went, it was just people with Lyme. Every person sitting in the waiting room, waiting in the halls, we all have Lyme disease, and there were different people every time I went. So right. And now there's no treating doctors in Ontario, so I go to Ohio. So you're going to Ohio now? Yes. I go every 3 months to a Lyme literate medical doctor that's been trained from out west, or out east, by 2 of the top Lyme doctors in the States. And so are you on antibiotics now then? Yes, I'm taking 4 different antibiotics, 3 to treat the Lyme disease, and it's 3 forms, and 1 to treat Bartonella, which is a co-infection of Lyme. So the Lyme literate doctors agree that you have Lyme in the US, and Dr. Bagdalian, but yes, the local authorities? I think my family doctor believes I have Lyme. He doesn't know enough about it, so he's not really commenting either way. I've actually been trying to get my name counted on the list for people who have Lyme disease, because the Chief Medical Officer of Ontario put out, I believe it was last year, a letter to all physicians that even clinically diagnosed patients are to be counted. So I'm in the process right now of making them put my name on that list. I had my report from Dr. Bagadilia sent to the health unit on Thursday, and I'm following up with that because I want my name on that list, and it's supposed to be there. So I'm hoping that I can get my name there, because people need to know there's more than just the 3 people in the last 3 years in Lambton County that had positive tests. And I've had 3 tests in Ontario, and every one of them's been negative.
Because the testing is
horrible, and even the doctors, when you try to tell them that you have medical studies, I have 3 or 4 different medical studies that have studied the ELISA tests that they use that state that it's inaccurate at least 50% of the time, more actually, and the doctors don't want to hear it. They figure if they have a test, and people think that too. I know I did. You get a test for something, you think if you get tested and it comes back negative, then that means you don't have it. I was tested the first time 3 years ago, and the test came back negative. I really didn't know much about Lyme, and I believed the test, and I ended up where I am now because of a faulty test where I could have been treated 3 years ago before I became disabled by it.
Right. So all these surgeries, and what do you think of all the exploratory surgery and everything? I mean, you've got to have a pretty good opinion on what's been done to you.
I'm angry that I've had to endure numerous procedures, blood work, surgeries, and I mean, would you have had a hysterectomy? If, oh no, I didn't need the hysterectomy. The only reason I had the hysterectomy is because Lyme disease affects your hormone system as well as every part of your body. So what ended up happening was all my hormones were going hoo-hoo, and it caused changes in my reproductive cycle. So because of that, it was causing changes that looked like I had a medical problem. They couldn't figure out what it was, but they knew it was gynecological. So had I been diagnosed with Lyme disease and treated for Lyme disease, I wouldn't have needed a hysterectomy.
Right. And then other exploratory stuff as well. Was that just...
I had a colonoscopy because they didn't know. Look, the kidney stone procedure, they same thing. They thought there might be something there, and there wasn't. The doctors just didn't, they had no idea how to help me. I was in the emerge in Sarnia probably 10 to 12 times in the last year with 10 to 12 different things going on, and nobody wanted to listen to me. They kept telling me there was nothing wrong. At one point, when things got really bad, I actually thought I was going to die on going into the hospital, and they told me that I was, he thought it might have been MS, because at that point I had started having a lot more neurological problems, and my tongue was going numb and on one side, and so they wanted to send me for another MRI, which was my 4th MRI, to look for MS again.
Your family life.
And this destroyed my family. It's because the lack of awareness in Ontario and Canada about Lyme disease. A lot of close family members think I'm nuts because they hear what the doctor says, and I've been told that it's in my head, that I'm making it worse than it is, because it's hard to explain Lyme disease to a person, because unless you have it, you wouldn't believe it.
Hear, hear.
And so it's caused a lot of problems. I went from being an active mom of 2 kids and working and running around with my kids, and that doesn't happen anymore. So, and it was preventable.
Do you have a lot of fatigue, or?
I did originally. I do a lot of B12 shots, and they help considerably with the fatigue. But I do experience a lot of Parkinson-like syndrome from it. So I have a lot of shakes, and that tends to make things difficult. And then you get a lot of the nausea and stuff where you just feel sick, and that makes it difficult as well, because nobody wants to feel sick. Like, everybody hates having the flu. Well, when you have the flu every day, it's kind of debilitating.
I always say every day, but it was just for 20 years.
Yeah, yeah. It's and people they just don't get it because they look at you and they say, well, you look fine. But people who know me from what I was like before I started this last year, a lot of people they'll be like, you look horrible, because it's now affected a lot of my skin. I've lost a lot, losing hair constantly. Just it's really affected a lot of outside stuff that it hadn't before. So like, you can see it if people know what they're looking for, but most people have no idea. My MPP, Bob Bailey, has started a petition to bring to Queen's Park on behalf of Lyme disease. It basically tells us that Lyme disease is a chronic disease, that here in Ontario the testing is poor. There isn't very much education as far as the doctors go, and that if you contract Lyme disease in Ontario, you will, right now you're unable to get medical help because there are no doctors trained on how to treat Lyme disease, nor are there any doctors really willing to treat Lyme disease. So we're hoping to have this brought to Queen's Park in the fall, and we've been circulating it around Ontario, all the other people that have Lyme disease, which is a lot more than what Ontario says, are handing it out and getting family and friends and whatnot. So hopefully it'll make a difference. This will be the second petition in a year and a half that's been brought to Queen's Park over Lyme disease. So it is definitely a issue, and hopefully it'll make a difference the second time.
Surgeries, procedures, and years later Christine ends up diagnosing herself. Big surprise. A copy of Bob Bailey's petition is available at www.cycleforlyme.com. I encourage everyone to print, sign, and return this petition as per the instructions it contains. We all owe a great deal to Christine Heffer. During a time when her own health suffers, Christine continues to have a determination to help ensure that other people do not end up with this disease. When one person can bicycle 1,800 kilometers around Ontario and meet people like Christine Heffer, the writing is on the wall that something is clearly wrong with the way our healthcare system is both implemented and managed. Thank you, Christine Heffer.